Hey everybody, welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. Today we have Sara Laschever, and we are talking about her book, Women Don't Ask. And we are also celebrating Equal Pay Day. So welcome, Sara.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me a little bit about what Equal Pay Day is.
The Equal Pay Day marks the day into the next year until which women would have to work in order to earn as much as men did the year before. So if men earn whatever, $100,000 by December 31st, women would have to work another 90 days approximately until April 2nd of the following year to earn that same $100,000. So it's almost a third of the year, almost a quarter of the year.
Why
That
are we
women
celebrating this day?
We're not celebrating it, we're marking it, we're drawing attention to it, that this is ridiculous that women only make 80% of what men make and that we have to work so much longer and in most cases harder to earn the same amount of money.
All right, to give another stat that just made me depressed. It was in the
Oh
very
no.
beginning of your book. I'm sure people tell you about this all the time. So suppose that at age 22, an equally qualified man and woman receive job offers for $25,000 a year. The man negotiates and gets his offer raised to $30,000. The woman does not negotiate and accepts the job for $25,000. Even if each of them receives identical 3% raises every year throughout their careers, by the time they reach 60, the gap between the salaries will be widened to more than $15,000 a year, with the man earning 92,243 and the woman only earning 76,870. Okay, it doesn't seem like a huge spread, but remember that the man will have been making more all along with his extra earnings over the 38 years, totaling $361,171. Now, if the man had banked the difference between the every year in savings account and earned 3% interest, which is pretty, small.
Low. Yeah.
By the age 60, he would have 568,834 more dollars than the woman. Wow.
Yeah, pretty depressing. Um,
What was
I,
that? It was like an eclipse came over our screen.
it was my cat. It occurred to me I probably should have locked him in somewhere. Let's
I
hope
love
he does. Sometimes he will come and sit on the keyboard, but
it was an
hopefully not
eclipse.
today.
It was like I think it was a
Yes.
perfect timing. It was kind of like fade to black.
An eclipse of the soul,
I
yeah.
know. That's
So the thing
that's
about that statistic is we're talking about people making, at the low end of the earning spectrum. So if you are talking about people who start out making $60,000 a year, $70,000 a year, and there's that five or ten or $15,000 difference, just that one negotiation, that it can, magnify with each raise predicated or calculated as a percentage of what you were earning the year before, it grows enormously over time. And of
yeah.
course, it's if a man negotiates once and is successful, he might negotiate every raise after that, while the woman takes everything she's offered after that. So there's one study showed that women who do not negotiate their salaries regularly can sacrifice over $2 million a year
Wow.
over the course of their
Wow.
careers. And that's, of course, people in higher earning professions, not low skilled people, but the model is true enough, regardless of where you start, that
Right.
you're going to earn a lot less.
Yeah, because this was $25,000 to $30,000. So it's a really low starting point. So you can see,
Exactly.
more than a $500,000 difference by the time you take into the time value of money and interest earned, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So
And
this is
professional people tend to
earn more, right? So
retire later, but also retire later. So more time to earn less if you're a woman.
okay, this book was extremely helpful and then also a little bit depressing, to be honest. It's like just seeing the research that you've done between the
Mm-hmm.
differences between men's behavior and women's behavior. And I can say as a woman, I'm guilty of many of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the other stats that's in here that I thought, going back to our original example, is that when men and women, let me see if I'm going to just read it because I'll probably screw this up. People who go into negotiations with more ambitious targets tend to get more of what they want than people who go in with moderate goals. So this was in a chapter you're talking about come up with the target salary that you want and how important that is for men or women to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And you said in the Ivy League MBA study mentioned that Linda and her colleagues, your co-author, observed that 30% increase in a person's goal going into negotiation produce at minimum a 10% increase in the negotiated amount he was able to obtain. So let's say that it was like 100,000. I would say, hey, I really want 130,000. I may walk back with 110,000, but
Right.
I asked for 30,000 more. Now, this means so then, and that a woman would be asking for actually smaller than 30%. She wouldn't ask for 130.
10% more.
Yeah, she
So
would just ask for
110,000.
$110,000 and then correspondingly walk away with
103 or 104, something
103,000.
like that.
So just women don't even ask for, when we actually do negotiate and we ask for amount, we don't even ask for amount that is greater than men and what they ask for. And then all the things that we just talked about and how the
Yeah.
repercussions of that over time multiply. So this also made me sad, but then informed, right? At least I know that part of what I should be doing is asking for more. Um,
But let me just add to that. Men routinely aim higher, and there is a direct correlation between your target or what you're aiming for. And since men aim higher, they typically get more. One reason women aim lower is because we are not very good at estimating what we're worth, what our work is worth.
right.
And so what's really critical is to do your research and find out what the men are asking for. Find out what people at your level with your credentials, what they're getting, and then aim for the top of that range. And when I say people at your level with your credentials, I mean men as well as women. Women often compare themselves to other women who are typically underpaid. So you need to find out what the market is paying for people with your skills, not just what other women are getting.
Right. Okay. So I have, and I just want to mention the book is actually filled with all the reasons why this happens. That women aren't socialized, they're rule following, they don't feel like they have a lot of control. They feel like they're more oriented towards external authority versus
Yeah.
internal authority. They kind of see that can't like their perspective is like you can't squeeze blood out of a turnip and the world is my
Mm,
oyster. So these are all things that I thought were
right.
really interesting. And then women traditionally undervalue their worth. So they focus on what they need versus what they're actually worth. And
Right.
they don't know that they're worthy of anything until someone tells them. So they're also like looking at that external validation to even feel
Right.
worthy.
Right.
And they don't get dissatisfied with what they have. They're just more content. And
Mm,
actually, the great example that you gave that I was wondering if you could share, there's an example of a woman, and I see this a lot, like women who have taken off a period of time to
mm,
spend with their babies when they're 0 to 5. And then once their kids go to school, then they go
mm,
back. And then there's a sense, or like maybe they go back to work in middle school.
mm,
And I coach those women, and they kind of have this attitude like anything I get is like good
mm,
because I've been
mhm,
out
mhm,
of the workforce, or I'll take a job that has flexible hours. So literally, there was this woman who used to be head of the NBC Online. She was the head editorial person,
mm, mm,
or she ran the NBC Online site in London.
mhm,
And now
mhm,
she was looking for a job that was paid, I don't even know, like a quarter of the salary that she'd been making 15 years ago.
mhm.
And she's like, well, maybe I should just go for it because, it's been so long and I've been out of the workforce, and this one gives me flexibility. What would you say to people who are kind of like women who are going back to work that kind of have that belief system?
Well, it's problematic because the marketplace and the people interviewing them do believe that their value has eroded during those years they weren't working.
Hmm.
So they need to make a good argument for why actually being out of the workforce, not doing what they were doing before, has actually given them more skills, different skills. And the truth is that mothers have a lot of great skills. Women are great at, well, mothers are great at parallel processing. They're great at executive functioning. They're really great at their time management. I do know a lawyer in a big office who says she loves hiring mothers because they're so focused and efficient. When they are at work, they are getting it done. They are not, making small talk or wandering around looking for snacks or whatever. They are working. And so women need to own what it is, the skills that they have developed, but they also need to go and do some research and find the job that the skills, the experience they've accumulated is right for them. Not just think, I'm grateful for anything I get. Just let me be the secretary in the school's whatever main office when they've already negotiated big deals for their law firm or for their corporation in the past. They have this skill. And the other thing I'll say about that is women actually are great negotiators when we're negotiating for other people, when we're negotiating on behalf of our employers or our clients or our students or our patients or our causes or our children. And it really is taking those same skills and using them on your own behalf. So doing the legwork, doing your research, preparing, and then going in and asking for the right things and listening, paying attention, reading the room, all those things that women are really good at.
Yeah, I was just working with a client, and she was taking a salary that she thought she had asked a friend of hers what her salary was in this organization, and it was 60%. And this person would be someone who's at a higher level than the job that she was taking. And it was 60% of the last job that she left just last year. And she said, I wonder if I should take that. And I said, there's some risk at taking that, because if you take that, you're always going to be at this lower salary. And then when you take the next job, they're going to say, what was your previous salary? Not what was your salary 2 salaries ago, the last one, your previous salary. So you're just kind of on this road to getting a lower salary once you accept this lower salary. So I said, why don't you just say, well, I'll work 60% less, I'm going to work 40% less, or say like for half, for this number of months, I'm just going to take off. I'll take the summer off. So, I mean, if you're going to pay me not market rate, then let's figure out a way. And she hadn't even thought about that. She thought, oh, I didn't even think of asking for that. So, why is it that women don't even think about asking for those kinds of things?
Well, you mentioned some of the reasons. We are socialized to be grateful for what we're offered, to be a little bit more passive, to be compliant, to be cheerful, to be nice, not to be demanding or pushy or greedy or selfish or conceited. And we know that that's actually risky to come off as kind of aggressive, as self-promoting. Our normative expectations, that's the way we think things should be. We think men should be self-promoting, representing their own interests. We think women should be taking care of the group. We think women should be communal. So when women say, hey, look at me, I've done a lot, I deserve more, we don't respond very well to that. And it's not just men who don't like women who are a little more forthright like that. Other women often don't like it either. So it's fine to say those things. The critical adjustment, which a lot of women don't like to hear, and I kind of get it, is the way in which you ask. You need to ask in a cheerful, upbeat, not threatening way. You need to use your body language and your eye contact to not seem threatening. And then talk in this cheerful way. It's like, this is what I'm bringing to the table. I have a lot of value to offer. And if you give me what I'm asking for, I'm going to deliver for you. And it's going to be great for the company or for your group or your department or whatever. Women can't go in. In fact, men don't do this that much either and say, this is what I need. This is what I deserve. You need to go in and make what we call a relational argument. You give me what I'm asking for, and it will be good for you.
Okay, so if the woman had said, so let's actually take this example of a real life example of this woman who they're asking her to take potentially 60% less. And I said, well, what do you want? And she said, well, what I want is time to write for she's like, I have hesitancy with this job because I would like to actually take, some time to work on some personal projects. And, and I also feel hesitant and feel like I'm, that I feel a little bit hesitant. So I said, well, why don't you, so let's say that you're this person, you want to actually negotiate. What would you go in saying like, okay, Sara, so, hi, we heard here, what's this meeting about?
So before I answer that, so have they made her an offer?
Let's say that they gave her an offer, and let's say the offer was 100,000, and she could be making, more than that. Let's say that
Mhm.
they made her 100,000, and I don't know what I don't know what 60%, but let's say that she's like feels like she should be, or at 60,000. Okay, so let's say that she was making 200,000, and then now they're offering her substantially at 60% less than that.
Okay. So, how would you go and say, first of all, thank you for this offer. I think it's a great company. I'd be delighted to work for you. But frankly, it's so much less than I've been making before, and so much less than I know I could get elsewhere. I'd really like to talk about what your expectations are for that much money. If there's some way we can figure out a more limited schedule or a more concentrated performance expectation for me. If I'm going to take that much less, I really can't basically do full time work for what is essentially part time pay. So tell me what your expectations are, and let's figure out if we can make it work. Because I do think it's a great company, and I believe in your mission.
Okay, so well, sorry, that's all we have budget. I mean, that's really all that we can afford. So I can't do
Okay.
much, and we're desperately in need of a full-time person.
Hmm. Well, let me think about it. I have some other irons in the fire. It doesn't make sense for me. I'm sure you can understand professionally for me to take, such a big step backwards. I'm sure if you or me, you'd feel the same way. So let me think about it. And maybe you could think about it too, see if there's any give in your budget that they haven't dug out yet.
Okay.
And maybe we could talk in a few days.
Okay. All right. So like what was interesting in that is that you actually threw out a whole bunch of I gave you one option which is like
Yeah.
no, okay. But if I said, "Well, so what did you mean by it? What were you proposing?"
Hmm. If I said, what are you
Yeah,
proposing?
let's say if I
But,
said I said you said it's much less. It's like much less than that. That is market rate. I would propose a different kind of work schedule. I think that's what you would propose. So I'd say, okay, well, tell me what you're thinking.
well, 60% of my time could be 60% measured weekly. So that would be, if, maybe a 3 day week or monthly, 3 weeks out of the month, or yearly. I'd work whatever 7 months and have 5 months off. And we could figure out, is that 3 months in the summer and one at Christmas time and one in the spring, or what would make the most sense? When is your crunch period? And, work around that so that I am here present, pumping on all cylinders when you need it most. And, have some freedom for other projects to kind of supplement what I'm getting here at times when your schedule is not quite as demanding.
Oh, well, I would love to do that for you, but it's going to be such a problem because we actually have a couple of other women who would love to do the same thing, and it just seems like it's a problem in terms of fairness.
Yeah, I understand that. And I think that is something important you're going to need to reflect on. What I would say is, you know, she's doing something different. She's bringing something else to the job, talking about me,
Yeah.
that she's not identical to you guys in what what her job commitments are and what her skills and talents are, that she's actually, the value she's bringing makes it worthwhile for us to make this special deal.
Exception, yeah. So like there's like I'm bringing so much value that you're not you've I know you've been looking for a really long time for a person.
Yeah,
You haven't found them, and I
right.
am that person, but most people who are of the caliber
At my
of
level, yeah,
expertise actually make the amount that that is 60% higher. So,
right.
this is how we can work together. You can get someone with my caliber. I know that there may be some equity issues, but I guess it's what I'm hearing. It's like you have to figure out what's most important for your business, to
Well,
get
and
this person
also
in or
find a way to explain it to the other people that makes sense to them, which is she's got all this experience. She brings a wealth of knowledge, fantastic contacts, great reputation, whatever it is that is of the most value to the organization. Say she brings so much here that we don't have.
right.
And so it makes sense for us to figure out a way to get that skill, that value in-house, even if we have to make a special deal with her. We still think it will be worth
Right.
that we'll all benefit from.
Right. And so when I had the same instance at Microsoft, when I was able to like figure out a negotiate a situation, there
Mhm.
were so many women that were so angry at that I
Mhm.
got this and they didn't. And finally, my boss, I just can't take it. Like the number of women who are complaining to me about this
Mhm.
is extraordinary. And even though I use those examples, it just it became overwhelming for him. And so
Mhm.
I think he stopped. So it's hard. It's very hard. I mean, I think whenever you have these exceptional kind of negotiated deals, it always causes a rift within the community. So,
Yeah, I think sometimes it's easier for an organization to make an exceptional or an idiosyncratic deal with someone they're bringing in when it's someone who's already in-house to give them this extra benefit
yeah.
or to give them a kind of irregular arrangement that can create more jealousy, I think, or more a greater sense of unfairness.
That's a really good point because that's what it was. It's like I'd been
Mhm.
there for a while, and then all of a sudden I was able to negotiate this great deal, and they were like, "Why was she able to? This is unfair," you know.
Right,
But
right,
like I think you said, if it's like, "Hey, we have this like rock star that we're importing in,
right,
so like we
exactly.
have different," and they did that with. There was a point in which Microsoft was hiring all these people in different fields that we weren't really familiar with, and so they brokered all sorts of unusual deals that
Yep,
other people
yep,
didn't, and
yep.
using that same thing. Okay, so you talk about all the societal norms, and then you mention something that is one of the chapters, and that I suffer with all the time. Like literally, people call me scary or intense.
Oh,
Was the
mm,
other word that I'm
yeah.
considered intense or scary, and part of that was because I was born on the East Coast, and there's just this kind of
Mhm,
assertive.
mhm,
I was my first job was in General Electric, and kind of the modality there that I saw like was successful because you're
mhm.
just role modeling the culture that you
Yeah,
see. It's like you got to
right.
get your numbers, you got to get them now. I'm not sure why you're
Mhm,
not getting those numbers. Like just let gets moving, like that kind
right.
of like
It's
you know,
business. Come on.
yeah,
Yeah.
assertive. Um,
No
uh,
nonsense, not wasting any time, no fat.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, I came over to the West Coast, and that just fell
It's a
flat.
different style.
It's
Yeah.
a style that was completely different. And it goes, and I wonder even on the East Coast, because I only saw men. I didn't
Mm,
see any women so I
mm,
really didn't know how they behaved. So I didn't
mm.
have like a role model. I was working in a
Right.
manufacturing
Mm,
organization, predominantly male, and I only saw men acting
mm,
this way. So I assume this is what we do to get work done in a
mhm.
corporation. And then I came over to the West Coast and it fell flat. Why? And in your chapter, you explain why. Can you kind of tell the listeners why what's happening in that scenario?
Well, getting back to these normative expectations, how we expect men and women to behave. And one of the first things, if not the first thing people notice when they meet someone else is their gender. They register that before, class, color, anything, male or female. And we have very different expectations for how men and women behave. And when people don't conform to those expectations, it bothers us. It catches our attention. So,
Mm.
for example, I'll often hear, the worst boss I ever had was a woman, or, the most difficult person I ever worked with was female. And I'm not always convinced that that's true. I think many men are no nonsense, don't suffer fools gladly, hard driving, whatever, but that conforms to our expectations for men. So we don't mark it. It doesn't catch our attention. But when women act in ways that we identify as more male, we snag on it. And so it's not necessarily that those women behave differently than the men, it just violated our expectations. And so we registered it and we reacted differently. So women need to, be aware of those expectations. I wouldn't say distort your personality or pretend to be someone you aren't, but recognize that making a little bit of extra effort in terms of, whatever smiling body language, personal presentation can yield a lot of dividends down the line. It's pragmatic. If you feel like you're selling out your feminist principles, don't do it. But if you feel like you can do it as a tactic to get what you
Mm.
want,
Mm-hmm.
that might be a way to get where you want to go. For example, another example, research shows that women who are nicely professionally made up, wear a little bit of makeup, nicely coiffed, professionally dressed, are perceived to be more competent than women who wear no makeup at all or women who wear a lot of makeup or are really glammed up. So,
Mm.
do you want, yeah, this is what I like to look like. I like to do my hair. I like to, look like a babe. Do you want that to actually interfere with you getting ahead? If it
Mm.
feels like violating your cultural identity to compromise that, maybe you shouldn't do it, but you should at least be making a choice. You
Yeah,
should
you're
know
making a conscious choice versus like, okay,
right,
here's what's the
right.
reality is. You may not. It's very paradoxical because in one way, like I want to be strong and I am strong and
Yeah,
confident, but yet
right.
when I'm myself, I'm not likable. So now I have to kind of pretend I'm someone I'm not, practically
Yeah.
speaking, in order to get what I want, which is to, whatever that thing is. And so it's
Which is to
paradoxical because
this,
right, because you're telling me
right.
that a lot of the things, it's like women aren't confident. They don't feel like they have a locus of control. I don't have a lot of those issues. I'm not even sure why. I think it's the ways that I was raised by mom who was like that. So I don't have these kinds of beliefs. But yet, when I actually go in corporations, I'm scary because I don't fit the stereotype of those
The
norms.
expectations, right.
So it's paradoxical.
Mm.
It's
Yeah,
very
well, and you have, I think, a double bind there because you're not just female, but your ethnic appearance is your, whatever Asian.
Asian. Yeah.
We have some expectation that's whatever, who knows where it comes from, that Asian women will be docile and,
Right.
quiet and,
Like a geisha
whatever.
girl, like with the
Yeah,
fan and like
exactly.
white
You
face
add
made up.
that to being female, and it's kind of a double bind.
Yeah, it is.
So, do have to think hard about how you want to present yourself that feels authentic to you, but may also, be a little bit more strategic about it, in order to get what you want.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's a tightrope that a lot of women are walking. You
Yeah.
don't want to be bossy or scary, but you don't want to be kittenish or flirtatious.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's a narrow tightrope, and it's dumb that women should have to work so hard.
Yeah. Well, I was just reading another study. I was on leadership, and in this study they were saying that the one of the most effective leadership styles is authentic leadership, where you authentically are transparent about who you are, and
Right.
being unabashed with who you are. As long as it's not harmful. But if you're confident and you have confidence and strength, and you move forward, and you're
Mm,
directive, that's your normal state of being, then in a lot of ways this is saying, well, yeah, dial it back a little bit, sister, because that's not, if you want to be influenced because I'm an Asian woman, let's say, using those two filters,
right.
it's a double bind or a double
Yeah.
whammy in that
Yeah.
particular case. And so this brought up a different question. I know it's a little bit off topic, but as you were talking about these expectations, I was thinking about, I went to Durham and I was visiting a farmer's market, and there was two transgender. So there was a man who identified as a woman and a woman who identified as a man, and I was buying jam, and I didn't even know what to do with myself. I was like, I'm not, and it's like, what is my problem? I
Mm-hmm.
actually have no problem with someone expressing authentically who they are. That's what I do for a living as a coach, is getting people to express authentically who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Yet when I saw this, like, I didn't know what to expect. And so I think I get it now, because there are these norms. Like, once I know that I'm
Right.
working with a woman or a man, not a man that identifies as a woman, or a woman that identifies with a man, that kind of just threw
Mm-hmm.
a very confusing construct in my head, and I didn't know how to work with it. So in this world in which now there's all these different permeations of ways of being, I don't even know if you're studying that or thinking about that in your research, or what happens in
Well,
the
it's
workplace.
not, it's not central to the work I do. I think, I think part of it has to do with familiarity. I think trans people have been really hidden for a long time, that
Hmm.
they have been among us, but they haven't felt free to show their authentic selves. And when we have lived among more trans people who are just right out there, yep, I'm a man, I was born with breasts, I had them cut off, whatever, this is who I am. We will, I think, get more comfortable. And I think the younger generation,
They have no
millennials are
problem.
more comfortable. I think it is a lot of generational thing that we are, as older adults, still a little caught in this idea that gender is binary, that there are women and there are men and there's no gray area.
Yeah.
And younger people, they know there's a lot of gray. There are a lot of points along that continuum. And hopefully, as they get into leadership roles, they're going to make it possible for everybody to express their authentic selves in whatever way suits them.
Right.
And it's one reason I think millennials, for all the flack they take from, boomers and Generation X, are actually going to make a lot of positive changes in the workforce, because men in that generation want a lot of what women wanted. They want more balance in their lives. They want time for their hobbies and their causes. They want to go watch their kids play soccer. They don't want to work 90 hours like their fathers do. And as a generation, they're just much more comfortable with intersectional identities. And when they get into leadership roles, they're going to be determining the culture, and that will be better for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah, it's interesting because as I was reading this book, your book, Women Don't Ask, I thought my sons and my husband fit every single thing that you describe as women characteristics fit my,
Mhm.
and they're not necessarily effeminate. They're like comfortable. On the West Coast, if
Mm,
you don't act in this way, it's a big
mm,
problem. I don't think you can
right.
survive on the West Coast or let me put it this way, men who are more comfortable demonstrating a collaborative and kind of approach and
Problem solving
negotiating
approach.
problem solving are way more successful on the West Coast than they would
Mm,
be if they weren't
mm,
this way. And then even my sons who are raised by their Chinese mother
mm,
have these kinds of in our culturally it's
mm,
about respect, doing
mm,
hard work, being recognized, and thinking that you're going to be recognized for your hard work.
mm,
All these things I could say, are true of my sons too. So,
mm.
um, do you think that this is just like a woman issue, or I mean, I'm wondering because maybe I'm just
Yeah.
simplifying things too much.
No, there's statistical preponderances. So more women are like this and more men are like this. But again, not polarities. So there are, women who are a little bit more comfortable asking, but not as comfortable as, the captains of industry, men who are a little less comfortable, who are a little bit more like women in the relationship to negotiating for themselves. But it's there are more women on one side and more men, statistically, overall.
Right,
But it's also true that you have to, everything is kind of context specific. So
right,
if you are used to, as a woman, negotiating with people in New York City, you are going to have to adjust if you're going to the South. The
right.
expectations for female behavior in the South are different from the expectations for female behavior in New York City, just as they are
Uh,
different on the West Coast and in the Midwest. There are differences, cultural, contextual differences. And
okay.
one reason women can potentially be really good at that is we tend to be very tuned in to what's going on in the room. We tend to,
Mm,
register the social circumstances, pretty closely. And
right,
if you feel confident enough to kind of adjust it, in the moment, to you kind of think and adjust on your feet, that's very, very effective.
right.
And there is one study that showed that the most effective leaders are women who can switch between more masculine and more feminine leadership styles.
Yeah,
That there are certain times when it's good to be more authoritative, more command and control, more directive, and other times when more feminine styles, listening, collecting information, that kind of close listening, focusing on, winning buy-in. Those female leadership styles can be really effective. So if you can kind of move between the two, that's sort of the golden area.
okay. So I'll give an example of that because I had a client that I literally just spoke to, and she wanted to move out of a group where she felt like the people in the group. She's a software development engineer, so
Mhm.
she's in a group that, from what I can tell, is a predominantly male-oriented culture,
Mhm.
where a lot of the things that were mentioned in the book that men are recognized and acknowledged for,
Mhm.
she doesn't have, because by the way, she's not a man. So like the kinds of
Right.
things that she
Mhm.
offers were values that they didn't
Mhm.
attribute, and the one value that she did offer, which is highly intelligent, they
Mhm.
also would dismiss because there's this kind of jockeying among men about who's smarter. Okay,
Right.
so she said she wants to get out of this group. She talks to her boss, and her boss said, "Nope. I can't move you out of that group because if I move you out of the group, it's going to look bad on you, like you can't get along with other people. So I can't move you out of the group. And she said, yeah, but I've tried all these different things. The people there are rather condescending, and it's really just, it's demoralizing for me. I really do not want to work on this group. And he's like, I'm sorry. And that was it. Okay, so in that particular example, she'd brought up several different times like why this was a problem, the specific examples that had given
She
her
brought
this
it up with
impression
you.
to him,
Well, she
the
brought it up
boss,
to him. Okay.
the reasons why this particular group was challenging. Like they would assign her a work item and then do the work item on her behalf, and then be mad at her for not doing the work item. So just stuff like that. That's kind of like what to do. I mean, that's just a
Right.
bizarre behavior. So she goes in, and he's like, no, no. Not going to happen. So, I mean, so in this flexible style, then what would you do if, she's faced with she tried to be rational, logical, approach people, and now she's being labeled as, problem kind of person because she's actually demonstrating what she wants and speaking out her mind, which is not traditionally what females do. So, what advice would you give her, someone like that?
Well, she may have tried a lot of this, but let me throw a few things
Sure.
out there. One is, say to the boss, I need you to be my ally here. I am not performing as much as I can, as well as I can. I'm not contributing my full potential because the environment is hampering me, is in my way. And I want to perform I want to give you everything I've got. Can you be my ally and run some interference for me or represent to the group how smart I really am, how good I am, how you want them to treat me. So that's one thing. Ask him, can you help me? We're on the same side because they are. She
Right.
performs well, it makes him look good. If he is not, going to do it, if she's already sussed out that's not the kind of guy he is, he's not going to help her, then another thing she might do is she might try to meet individually with other guys in the group. Say, can we have coffee? Can we have lunch? And say, look, things aren't working that well for me. Tell me what you think I can do to make things work better. I want to get along with you guys. I want to support the team. I think I bring a lot of whatever talent, experience, knowledge, ability, and it feels like you guys don't want to make room for it. And I want to find out how to make that room and see if she can get individual men on her side instead of trying to deal with the group. Because when the boys get together, sometimes, they're showing off for each other. They don't want to look weak or whatever, in front of each other.
She's done all of
So
those
that,
different things,
yeah,
actually,
she tried all
literally
these
everything,
things. Well, then I think it's time for her to get another job,
which is
honestly.
what she ended up doing.
But yeah, I mean, sometimes if things aren't going to change, that's your only option, and it's disappointing. But you have to save yourself essentially.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to go to um, the different styles. I thought this is very interesting. You talk
Mhm.
about different styles of negotiating, and there's the dominant style, which is making constant eye contact, using a lot of hand gestures. Is this kind of like this kind of thing?
This is the evidence. This is what you should do. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm
Oh my
telling you
God.
what to do. But,
Okay. A hand gesture, speaking in a loud, angry voice, and tightening their face muscles so they appear tense. Okay. So, yeah, this is what we have to do.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. And then a submissive style, avoiding eye contact, making nervous gestures with their hands, speaking in a soft and steady voice, stammering and hesitating, slouching. Can you give me a sense of what that looks like?
Well, so I'm not looking at the camera now. I'm like, well, this is what I've done some research. This is what I think is the best decision we could make, and I think this is a good decision. In other words, interrupting yourself, injecting verbal modifiers. I think maybe pretty good. I sort of think this is my opinion. Well, if a lot of stammering, weak interjections rather than just saying, "This is the evidence. This is the research I've done."
Okay, got it. So that's submissive style. And then the task-oriented style that you just described is frequent eye contact using calm hand movements. Is calm like this? I don't know
Right,
what
right,
calm looks
right.
like. Calm
Well,
hand movements.
this is the evidence. This seems like the obvious conclusion. Cheerful, down to earth, centered. This is the I can't speak. This is the data. This is the evidence. this is what I think we should do. Not threatening, not pushy, but not apologetic, and not, whatever, turning away from the issue at hand.
Right. So that's task oriented. And then there's a social style, which is leaning toward the audience, using unintrusive gestures, acting relaxed, communicating friendliness, and affiliated smiling.
Mm.
What is that? Is that what you just did? Or is that
Yeah, I
different?
maybe did that a little bit, a little bit more smiling, a little bit more warm eye contact. I'm leaning forward a little bit more now. One of the things you can do is mirror the other person's body language. If you
Right.
don't do it in a really obvious way, people feel connected to you. They feel sort of simpatico
Yeah,
if
like I
you are
noticed your
mirroring.
shoulders moved. You
Yeah,
did something with your
right, right,
shoulders and your
right.
face
Right.
softened.
Your
Like,
face should, there's this whatever do you know what RBF is?
mm-mm.
Am I allowed to say it? I don't know if I'm allowed
Oh
to
yes.
say it.
Oh no. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so it's this idea that when women are not smiling, they look severe, they look harsh, they look
I see.
mean.
Okay.
And so you need to practice in a role play with somebody that you trust or in front of the mirror so that your face in a relaxed way looks more cheerful. And I
Okay.
know that's true with me. When I am not smiling, I look a little severe.
Right.
So you want to get some feedback how to make warm eye contact, sometimes tilt your head just a little bit,
Yeah.
mirror the other person's body language, speak in a
Smile.
relaxed, upbeat tone of voice.
Yeah.
And when women do that, when they use that more social style, they actually are more persuasive.
Yeah.
People are more persuaded by their argument. And it's because they come off as more likable. And to be persuasive or influential, women need to be likable at the same time. Men need to make a good argument. These are the facts. This is the obvious, decision. Women need to say, these are the facts. And I think you'll
Right.
agree that this is what we should do.
Yeah. It's
A little
interesting.
bit more likable.
I talked to this guy named Mark Bowden. He's a body language expert, and he was
Mm-hmm.
saying that like women who like stand like this and like authoritative, like men don't, they
I don't
probably
like
don't
it.
like it, right? It may bring the energy of that energy that you need to like own your power, but like I actually stand like this all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize, but I'm sure it just makes men crazy. But if I was like, well, what do you, if I just did like, what do
No, no,
you,
no, not that extreme. That's going
okay,
way too far in the other direction.
yeah,
Yeah, centered, relaxed, not,
right, right.
like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and that's hard. A lot of women feel like, well, that's not my natural style, especially women who are introverts or women who are on the kind of like nerdy, geeky engineering, end
Right.
of the spectrum, where men don't have a lot of social skills either. It's hard for them. It's like, oh, I mean, I don't know how to do that. This is
Right.
me. Or I try to do that and it doesn't work. And that, you can maybe get some coaching, or you may decide, this is who I am. This is my style. I'm turning in great work. Let's talk about the work.
Yeah, and this leads to the next part where you have this really interesting statistic that women, one of the reason women don't ask is they have a fear of asking. Sometimes
Mm.
they don't even
It's
think to
fear of
ask.
rejection.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
part of it is like they don't even think to ask because we're like, I'm
right,
fine, I'm getting what I'm worth, which is
right,
less than other people, and I don't care because I'm
right.
satisfied. Okay, but and then sometimes they don't ask because of like you said, the anxiety. So if they increase their anxiety by 25%, it reduces their likelihood of asking for a raise. And I think is it 35%? I can't remember what percentage it is. But the men, if they increase their anxiety 25%, it just reduces to 3%. Like they're gonna ask even though it
Yeah.
makes them anxious. And you were talking about how it's important for women to do self-management. Anyone, man or woman, who are
Mm-hmm.
feeling anxiety, to
Mm-hmm.
do self-management,
Mm-hmm.
which you described as identifying the situations that may cause them stress. Like, oh, I know my boss's hot points. They're going to ask
Right,
about
the
this, this, and
flashpoints.
this,
Yeah.
and then include practicing their responses with a partner to build self-confidence, and then encourage them to set performance goals by valuing all potential outcomes and ranking their priorities. So figure out what things they could give away and like targets or reserves. So like kind of figuring out what's in your negotiating arsenal.
Yeah. Yeah. Ask for some things that you won't mind giving up, so then you can give them up, and it
Right.
both won't be painful, but you also are seen to be making concessions. And
Right.
when people make concessions, the other person feels like they need to reciprocate.
Right.
This, what we call norm of reciprocity, is very high.
Right.
You give up something, people will, well, okay, now what can I give up?
Right. What can I
And
give
so
up?
that having things to give up is actually a good thing. And but it's also important to focus on, figure out before you go in the room what's too important to give up, what your bottom line is.
Okay, so I'm going to give you an example because this is actually integrates everything that we've talked about so far.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
What we haven't talked about is coming up with specific goals, and well, we did a little bit in how men
Yes,
come up with a
doing
goal
your
that's higher.
research and aiming high. Yeah.
Okay, so let's say I go into pay scale or the multitude of different jobs out there, and I'm an undergrad that's going in for a job.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
you're not like it's a competitive world. There's a lot of people who want some interesting job in AI in San Francisco at Google, like some super
Mm-hmm.
hot company, super
Mm-hmm.
hot job. Okay, so they offer me. I'm a woman. This literally happened. I have a client who who
Mm-hmm.
fit this criteria.
Mm-hmm.
The job range when she looked was I'll just do it for simplicity's sake for numbers. So let's say
It's
she had the job ranges from 100 to $175,000 for her,
big range.
yeah,
Yeah.
for her job. And so they offered her, she was thinking that they're going to, she wanted to figure out how to negotiate the job. But let's say that they offered her $100,000
Mm-hmm.
because we already get the example of when you're
Right.
lower. So
Right.
they offered $100,000, they offered $150,000, or they offered 175. I said 100 to 175. Let's say they said 175. So they offer exact like the high of the
The
range,
top.
the mid
Mm-hmm.
range, or the low range.
Uh-huh.
So what would be the appropriate goal to be shooting for, or is it 30% over whatever they're asking?
Well,
Or giving rather.
you need to look at what the job criteria are, what the posting is looking for, and what you're bringing to it. It's like, I actually have all those qualifications and then some. I'm going to ask for 180 and hope I can get the 175. Right? I am overqualified for this job. Or I'm pretty qualified. I'm, right in the middle of the pack. I've got all. Then you should maybe ask for 165 and hope you'll get 160 or 155, a little above. The thing you need to remember is that women underestimate the value of what they've accomplished and men tend to overestimate. And
Mm.
women will not apply for a job unless they have every qualification listed on the job posting. Where men have 60% of the qualifications, they'll think, yeah, it's a stretch for me, but I can do it. I have the
Okay.
potential to do it, and they'll raise their hands. So look at how you compare to the whole pool and aim for the top of whatever part of the pool you think you're in. And if you're coming out of college, maybe you don't know how to find that information. Where do you fit into the pool? Go to career services. Go to your alumni network. If it's someplace like Google and you're applying to Google and you come from a school where people get jobs at Google, go to your alumni office and say, can you connect me with some people who've been hired by Google in the last few years? So just get a sense of how they conduct the negotiations, what has been successful in the past, what the culture is like around this hiring interaction. Do as much legwork as you can beforehand and be resourceful about who you can talk to, who to reach out to. Your dad has a coworker whose kid just got that kind of a job. Ask your dad to connect you. People are usually pretty happy to give
Right. So
advice to
don't worry about the
their
power
stuff.
differential. Like, oh my gosh, I'm from undergrad. What do I have to offer?
Right.
I just have to accept whatever they give me. It's just like kind of the
Yeah.
equivalent of the stay-at-home mom that goes back to work. It's like I'll just be happy. Like,
Right. Yeah. I'm so grateful. And I have my son is a senior in college. He's looking for a job. And what is it? It's April now. And he's gotten a couple offers that aren't that great. He wouldn't mind doing them, but they pay badly. And, I just tell him, don't get desperate and take something just because you feel like you're grateful to have anything.
right.
It's hard though. Especially if it's your first time in the job market, it's stressful. You don't know how to play this game. And that's why career services is a great place to go. Most career services professionals I've talked to at universities and colleges say, we have so much to tell them. The kids don't use us enough.
So they may say like, hey, listen, like basically, Google starting salary, like for most, whatever. My son's at Duke. At Duke grad
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
about 100 and 125 for someone with your experience. Where I think you're offering blah 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 because you have these really strong internships. Blah 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 blah. I think you could
Right.
offer ask for
You
blah.
could ask for more. And they'll also do mock interviews with you by phone, by Skype, in person. They'll help you prepare, and they'll
Right.
say, "Yeah, no, don't say it that way."
Right.
Present it a little bit more simply.
Yeah.
Don't talk nervously. Wait and listen. Wait for them to respond. That sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. This is
You're welcome.
invaluable advice. So many different, I have like 15 other scenarios that I've have written down here, but we
Mhm.
have covered so much. Thank you, Sarah,
Well,
for your
thank you. It's
time.
been a pleasure.
Yeah, so we've been
Take care.
talking to Sarah about her book, Women Don't Ask. And tell us about your website if people want to get in contact with you or kind of the next step.
It's saralaschever.com. It's my just my name run in, and my email address is on there. You can reach out. I'm happy to talk to people. I also have a second book called Ask for It,
Uh-huh.
which is more of a self-training manual. It really will help you teach yourself to be a better negotiator, and just having more practice, feeling like you know the terms, the way to frame it, what's worked well for other people in the past. Practicing that'll make you more confident, you know, right off the top. And if that isn't the right way for you to learn, there are exec ed programs in almost every city of any size where you can go take a negotiation course. It's a great investment in yourself and in
Yeah.
your career.
You're going to be using negotiation for your whole life.
That's right. In your
Really.
private life as well as at work.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show and love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.